Hello. That's RPGMaker. Today I was looking through some YouTube videos, and I'm really appreciative of all the support I've been getting on these RPGMaker tutorials. So I figured there's a lot more that I haven't explained about RPGMaker that I figure, I mean, there's not really any good up-to-date tutorials on it, and I've got some free time, so I figured I'd make a little quick tutorial on some of the basics of RPGMaker 2003. Because, I mean, a lot of people are really getting into that these days and making RPG Maker games, and I have some knowledge to share, and hopefully people find it interesting. So I guess we'll just get right into it. This is just going to be a basic overview of RPG Maker 2003. If you want more advanced shit, like what I was doing with cutscenes and shit like that, maybe I'll do a part 2 to this and cover some of that, but for now I'm just going to do the basics. So, I mean, let's start with basically the most essential part of the game design, or not game design, of RPG Maker 2003 is mapping. So mapping, very simple, very self-explanatory. This tab is going to be your, terrain tiles. This is a blank terrain tile. You can put parallaxes here. So let's do something really quick. Let's set this as the player starting position, and then let's give this map a parallax. So here's a map properties section. You can change your map's name. Let's just call this one, well, this one's already called map 1. Let's just call it England. I guess that's funny, right? Tile set, I'll talk about this a little bit later, but tile sets are basically different sets of tiles that you'll be using for your map. This is useful if you want to make areas look distinct. Probably pretty self-explanatory. Parallax background, you can enable or disable this. By default, it's disabled. But basically, it's going to take a graphic. Here's some... I'm using all RPG Maker defaults, by the way, for this tutorial. Just because that's what most people are going to have when they're starting out. And also because I don't want to waste time making art assets for something that's not going to actually be a game. So we got night sky, planet 1... These are basically just like the images that'll show up in the background. And we can set it to automatically scroll. Loop horizontally, which means that horizontally, as you go, it's going to basically loop on itself. Vertically, same thing as horizontally, just vertically. And then auto scroll is going to make it automatically moved independent of the player. I'll show you what that looks like. I'll set this to 4. Here we go. So here we are in our new game. See, look, that's automatically scrolling. Got our little guy here, and the background's automatically scrolling. Let's just exit out of that real quick. Awesome. Let's disable this and disable the parallax background to show you what it looks like without a parallax background. So by default, you're always going to get this black screen in the back. Pretty standard stuff. Let's go back into the properties. So scroll type, this is basically saying, so I'll do a smaller map to make this more obvious, because it's going to be a pain in the ass if I do this manually. But scroll type is basically determining, so your map will lead back on itself, if that makes sense. It's hard for me to explain verbally, but it's pretty easy to explain like when you see it. So here, I'll do this little square of grass so that you can see it so it's more apparent, I guess. And then we'll put our guy in here. So as you can see, I'm going around, and this is looping on itself. But since I have it set to only loop, I think it's vertically. Yeah, I have it set to only loop vertically. It's only letting me go up and down. I can set it to do horizontally, which is the same thing, more or less. It just goes horizontally. Yeah. So, yeah, it's vertically. Horizontally, it'll do the same thing, but horizontally. Loop both will make it loop both. I've seen people do some cool shit with it where they'll, overlay, a planet texture, and they'll have it look like you're going on, planets or whatever, and which I think is a pretty cool use of it. Sorry about that. But yeah, I mean, you can do cool shit with RPG Maker. It's just you have to be creative. More stuff. Teleport, enable, disable. I've never used this. Dungeon, generate dungeon. This is something you will almost never use if you're making a handcrafted game. I guess it's fine if you're trying to do like roguelikes, I guess. It'll just randomly generate a dungeon template for you, which will be new every time you play. Which I think is fucking stupid and completely useless, but whatever, some people might want to use that. You set the ceiling tile, the wall tile, the floor tile, and then you can set upper wall and lower hall. I mean, I've never used this. This is just prefabs for it. Again, I've never used this. Save, enable, disable. This as self-explanatory, basically. BGM, event setting. That's basically just saying, like, it's dependent on what event you have playing. I typically would suggest doing specify. And then this, you have the list of music to choose from. Same as parent map. That'll usually apply if we make a subroom. So let's make a subroom really quick. New map. This is a subroom. And as you can see, we can now do BGM same as parent map. So that's that. Map properties, back to map properties. Battle background, terrain based, or specify. Terrain based is going to basically choose from your terrain, which I'll talk about later. Specify goes one for the entire map. So I think with Pokemon type games, actually, you know what? Pokemon type games are probably just going to use one battle background. So you can kind of do terrain based or specify, but whatever. Again, same as parent map. Basically, same shit we just talked about with teleport and BGM. Or same thing as BGM, but it applies to everything else. Sorry. Encounters, this is going to be where you label your static encounters. Think about this, for example, as like if in Pokemon, how like when you go in a cave, there's just Zubats. You're going to find like a set of enemies that you can encounter in this area. And encounter rate is how frequently they'll spawn. Right now it's at 25% per thing, which fucking sucks. But whatever, it is what it is. Let's go into our tools and go to our database, because this is probably the most important part of RPGMaker projects. This whole area, I'm not going to touch on a lot of this. I'll just touch on some of the terrain shit we talked about earlier. Tile sets. So as you can see here, we have a bunch of different properties to our tiles. Let's just talk about terrain first, because terrain is what I was talking about earlier. So terrain, this is just setting, essentially it's setting what battle background you're going to have. You can use terrain for a lot of different things. I know in Beetle Ninja, for example, I used it to define what audio plays when you step. There's other things you can do with it, but that's just an example off the top of my head of what I've used it for. A tile set graphic, again, talking about tile sets, it's just going to be what source image it draws from. It draws from, excuse me. I'm getting tongue-tied today. So I guess now that we got terrain out of the way, we'll talk about passability. Passability, I've never used the square one, so I don't really know what that's for. But passability, you're going to have 3 states of passability. You're going to have star tiles, which goes above the player's head. Circle tiles, which the player can walk on. And X tiles, which the player cannot walk on. You can also have 4-way passability, which, I mean, it's pretty self-explanatory. It's arrows will define like where you can go and where you can't go. Counter, I've never used counters. You might use it, but I'm just not a very good reference for how you use that because I've never used them. Auto tile animation, I've never used an auto tile, but pretty self-explanatory. You can set the pace. Space Funeral, I think, uses this a bit. If you want another example, it's not me just trying to circle jerk myself. Exterior, interior, dungeon ship, same old as we were just talking about. All right, awesome. Let's go back to database. I closed that for some reason. Battle screen, you're basically, it's going to define what your characters can do in battle. This Fiona character, for example, can escape, whereas this Mao character cannot. Or actually, she can. Whatever. I'm thinking differently. This Mao character and this Fiona character have different abilities. Atmosphere, I can see, is different, and she also has access to special, which this character does not. This character can just use items, defend, and escape. System, this is going to be defining what your basic sound effects and graphics look like. So this will define what your boat, your ship, your airship. I have never fucked with boats, ships, or airships. I'll be completely honest. I find them completely unnecessary, but I mean, for some people, they might be kind of necessary. I don't know. Tile graphic. This is basically what your title screen looks like. So we'll change that to this picture of books. Game over graphic. I can't really show you how that's different, but it just plays when you die. Let's go to System 2. Menu commands. Basic stuff. This is when you pause, what your menu's going to look like. Common events. I've discussed common events before. Common events are basically shortcuts for if you have long strands of code that you use repeatedly. Let me think of an example. Yumaniki used it for the stairs, as we talked about in a previous little tutorial that I made. Beetle Ninja, I used common events to take away party members during the missions. That's another example from my past. I keep referencing Beetle Ninja in these goddamn tutorials for some reason, but it's just really, I think a lot of people think it's pretty well programmed or whatever, so it's a decent message. Battle messages, this is going to be what plays when you do battle. This terms is basically defining what certain commonly used phrases are. So, you can look in pause or whatever while I'm going through this. Pretty basic shit. Classes, this is basically creating a character archetype for your characters that you can apply to them. So if I like this guy and I want a guy who's exactly like him, you'll notice, where's this class at? Oh, no, he doesn't have a class. Whatever. Fuck me, then. I guess I got it wrong. Classes basically is a way of presetting characters. So, let's say I want to make a new character, but I'm too goddamn lazy. So I add a 15th party member. Fuck. I don't really want to work on this. Let's grab warrior class. Apply. Now we have basically a character. We just have to name him Bill. No nickname. His graphic is going to be... let me find something that goes... Yeah, there. And then his character set is going to be... there. Now we have Bill, the samurai. Fucking grade A character. And he's already done for us. Thank you for letting me remove this data. Skills, this is basically self-explanatory. This is your magic attacks. And all your specials that enemies are going to have access to and that characters are going to have access to. Items, again, self-explanatory. Enemies, self-explanatory. You're setting enemy attacks and behavior. I'll delve a little... if it seems like I'm going over this shit really quickly, I might make a more in-depth tutorial on this shit later. Because it's... I don't deal well with RPGMaker combat. I think it sucks ass, and I think 2003 is better at making exploration games like Yumaniki. But some people try and use the combat in RPGMaker. They're doing that shit wrong in my opinion, but it's what they want to do. Animations, you can use this also in the overworld, which is where I've used them most. In Beetle Ninja, for example, the rabbit guy who drives you around, that's one of these animations. Animations 2. This is for setting your character's animations in battle. So, as you can see, these guys all have different sets of animations, poses, animation type. Yeah, self-explanatory kind of. Terrain, we already talked about. System 2, we already talked about. I'm trying to think, is there anything else that I would like to talk about that we haven't covered that much? I guess there's eventing, but I think eventing is better saved for another video. Eventing is not a very basic thing. Eventing is kind of hard. Well, at least for beginners, it's kind of hard. It took me a while to get used to it. Maybe that's just because I'm fucking retarded, but I don't know. Alright. Well, thank you for watching, I guess. And I'd like to do more of these. I'd really like to make more RPGMaker tutorials. I think they're really fun. And a lot of people are getting into RPGMaker lately, so I'm pretty excited to share the knowledge I have. Anyways, if you have anything specific you want me to talk about, leave it in the comments, I suppose. And I'll try and make a video on it. Hopefully the audio sounds better this time. I know there was some comments on some of the previous videos about how my audio sucked ass, but, you know, I'm trying at least. But yeah, let me know definitely if the audio's better. Let me know if there's anything specific you want me to talk about and make tutorials about, because I really like making these RPGMaker tutorials. Anyway, cheers. I'm rambling at this point, but cheers. Thank you so much for watching.